this meeting to order at 9 o'clock. And in the spirit of reconciliation, we wish to acknowledge the enduring relationship between Indigenous peoples and the territories they traditionally occupy. We recognize and deeply appreciate the historic connection they have to this place, the land, the water, the air, and all that live on, in, and above it. We are grateful for the opportunity to meet here, and we thank all the generations of Indigenous peoples who have taken care of this place and who continue to care for it. And we want to show our respect. Hundreds of years after the first treaties were signed, they remain relevant today. May they guide our decisions and our actions. We commit to learn, to educate, to honor sacred places, and to take action towards real truth and reconciliation. Miigwech. Council, any declarations of pecuniary interest or conflict of interest? I'm seeing no one raise their hand. And I presume we have no open forum at this point. Otherwise, you already would have told me. And do we have a motion to adopt the agenda? Okay. I have moved by Councillor Bocek, seconded by Councillor Cooper. Be it resolved that Council adopts the agenda of March 29th, 2023 as circulated. All those in favor? And that is carried. And our agenda is relatively simple. We have a staff report with regards to our budget, and I'm going to turn it over to the primary staff person responsible. And I say, Ms. Boutiette, tell us about your budget as it stands right now, please.
Thank you, and through your worship, this is draft number 4 that is presented before you. Some of the background, we started working on draft 1 back in Q4 of 2022. We presented a draft 1 on December 14th, a draft 2 on January 4th, a draft 3 on January 30th, a draft 3 with proposed cuts in between that, and we are sitting here today with draft 4. At the last meeting, there were 5 requests from council, a comparator between draft 1 and draft 4, which is attached in Appendix A, in a summary form and also in a detailed form. The second request was that we identify a list of potential cuts. Those are included in the report and also included in draft 4. The request number 3 was a multi-year forecast with subsequent analysis and discussion with our peers. Multi-year forecasting is very time consuming and we wouldn't have been able to present to you a draft 4 promptly. So we replaced with a forecast scenario with a scenario 1, 2, and 3 so that you could see over time the impacts. So a lot of the items that were cut in half or postponed to next year were included in the 2024 forecast. And also we assumed a 2% annual salary and benefit increase and a 6% annual other operating expense increase. Scenario 1 is no or minimal use of reserves. Scenario 2 is the use of reserves for 2023. And from there, we would be trying not to use reserves, and scenario 3 assumes a stable tax rate of 10%. Request number 4 was a hiring freeze analysis, which was part of the report that was available to read. And request number 5 was to use reserve for the food cycler program, which is now in the 2023 budget. Draft 4. I'm going to pause at this point and turn the table to see if there are any specific questions.
Well, thank you very much. Obviously, this is a document in which we've had extensive discussions over the last few months, but I'm going to turn it over now to council to see if there are any questions or suggestions or ideas or what have you in regard to the draft for budget and explanations offered. Council. Councillor Hazelton, please, followed by Councillor Predko.
There we go. Technology now working. Thank you. I wanted to ask just one question. Initially, I went looking through the numbers and I'm still a little confused as to what's in and what's out. But one line item that I'm particularly interested in is the library line item, and I'm looking for confirmation that the library line item, as previously discussed back in December, is still in this budget.
Ms. Boutia.
Through your worship, yes, the library contribution is under the Department 50/50, grants and donations, joint and local boards.
So what line, what's the code number, so to speak?
2708.
What, can you give me a page number to go look for
Yes.
in the package?
I've got a digital copy of the package open. Karen, can I pull your assistance for a page number? It's the
Okay, never mind. I found it. Page 12 of the package, page 12 of 35. Item number 2708, grants and donations. And the number is in there, and thank you.
Councillor Predko, please.
Thank you, Your Worship. Ms. Bouthelette, my question is actually the same account, so I'm just actually wondering if you can clarify just the detail of, and I'm not seeing on page 12 of Appendix A what is there, but I just wanted to confirm. We had said that the association's grant proposals was going to be rewritten to be more broad. Has that been done yet? And I also want to just confirm there were a few items that we decided that were covered by the township budget anyway, and they weren't necessarily necessary to be proposed by these organizations. That being the expenses for purchasing pickleball paddles and nets, and the bench, picnic bench for Mrs. C Park.
Through your worship, so if you're asking if the policy has been rewritten yet, I could refer that to our CAO, Greg Mariani.
Through you, Mekutia, no, the policy hasn't been rewritten yet. We just want to get through the budget first, and then we'll have an updated policy ready for the next budget.
And then the subsequent part of the question. Oh,
With respect to the pickleball paddles, nets, and the picnic table, that'll come out of the maintenance budget. So yes, we will be purchasing them, but they're just not identified in the budget.
Okay, thank you.
Any other hands being raised at this point? Councillor Hazelton again.
Sorry to belabor the point, but finding things here seems to be a bit of a challenge for me. We have I don't know where it is or where I would look for it, but large item pickup for 2023, is that something that is in or not in?
Through you, Mekutia, right now the large item pickup is not in the budget. However, I had some preliminary discussions with Commissioner Steele of the district, and they may be looking at implementing that through the district.
So they would cover it this year and we would pay for it next year. Because we would be billed next year for it.
Through you, Mayor Coutier, not sure exactly how the logistics are going to work out. Again, very preliminary, so it may be that, you know, the district does not confirm that they're going to go ahead, in which case it would revert back to us to do, you know, to do that should council approve the expenditure for this budget year.
And I've forgotten what the number was, but roughly the ballpark number for what it was in 2022.
Yeah, in 2022, it was roughly, not including staff time, both preparing as well as being on site, excuse me, roughly about $30,000 plus tax.
So is there a slush fund somewhere, Julie, that could be accessed if the district isn't going to step up and look after it for us this year?
The slush fund would be our operating reserves.
Okay, thank you.
Councillor Cooper, please.
Just a comment on the same subject, large item. A couple of things. One is that I think we need to do it this year because we had a hiatus for about 3 or 4 years, and that's what I'm hearing from the communities, is that there's a real backlog of items. Given how it worked pretty well last year, even if we didn't have a lot of lead time, it did work quite well, and I would hope our CAO would continue down the path of sort of managing this process and doing the billing locally as opposed to through the district. We get charged by the district anyway, so why don't we, it works so well doing it ourselves. I'm suggesting that we budget for it and have it internally. That's my suggestion. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Graziano, and followed by Councillor Preclo, please.
Yes, good morning, and thank you, Julie, for the report. In our last budget meeting, I believe that council requested a side-by-side analysis of what we kept in and what we didn't, and perhaps it's in there. Unfortunately, as you're aware, I'm not working with a laptop right now. If it is in there, could you broadcast that so we can take a look at what's in and what's not?
Absolutely. May I request the host to enable participant sharing? Thank you. I'm curious to know if council would like me to go over the summary or the side-by-side or both.
Perhaps both, if you wouldn't mind. I think that would be great. Thank you.
Okay, so the summary, the very first draft that was presented to council had a shortage of $2.1 million. From that, an attrition or vacancy allowance was proposed of $495,000. An adjustment to volunteer firefighter wages to meet actual historical, to bring it closer to historical, of $39,000. A few things were funded through carry forward reserves. Similar, the planning building MLEO was funded by, partially funded by reserves. Some of the environmental testing also funded by reserves. The addition of food cycler was an addition to the budget, same as small items that we missed in first draft. and also additions to municipal grants, which I label municipal grants, but they're funding of the Township of Georgian Bay to external organizations, and an adjustment to the district recovery. We were now down to a shortage of 1.6 million on second draft. We then reduced municipal grants by 53,000, and we funded the food cycler program by other means. We were down to $1.5 million for third draft, and from that, these are the new items. We reduced road control maintenance to minimum standards. We deferred the official plan amendment. We proposed to discontinue the food bank with the food bank contract with the district. We deferred 50% of the master fire plan. We deferred annual funding of election reserves. We removed the washroom study for Port of Honey Harbor. We removed contingency costs in both finance and IT. We reduced some council and staff training, and this totals 15,000, but it's little bite-sized pieces in all of the departments. It's difficult to track in the detail one. We didn't fill the new roads lead hand position. Interest revenue was increased to align with actual interest rate increases. We reduced solicitor costs. We increased Office of the Clerk road closing and shore road closing revenues closer to its 5-year average. Similar we did in finance and the fire department. A decrease in fire department expenditures. We added a district rate recovery adjustment, but it was offset by a revenue increase. So the sum of those two is the difference of 76 that we had saw previously. Facility revenue increase closer to 5-year average. So we were down to 1.0 at our summary presentation. There was a very small balance adjustment. We added 15,000 based on a resolution passed by council to increase inland water testing. We adjusted the budget to actual taxation growth. Before this version, we were using estimated. Now we've gotten the actual taxation growth. So the total taxation growth is 92,000. We had estimated 30, the additional was 52. We added back the grass cutting that for Port Summer Park and Baxter Ward that was previously accidentally removed. We reduced planning consultants, planning legal fees, and we are attempting to find $20,000 savings in information technology. Township-wide RFP for our properly scoped water quality testing was added. An addition of 6,500 for SSEA to finish their 2022 water testing. A reduction for 50% of the planning assistant position because we're pretty sure we won't fill that till July. HR manager consolidated into HR coordinator and HR director. So the two positions were consolidated into one. And reduce waste management study funding from 28,000. So this is where we are at for draft 4 at a shortage of $854,000. Any questions so far?
Thank you, Ms. Bouquet. First and foremost, I want to say fantastic job to staff for reducing us down to 850,000. I think that's a fantastic place where we're at right now. I do have a couple of follow-up questions. One with respect to the road standards and decreasing the road standards. I know we discussed this in the previous budget, and perhaps the question is better directed to Mr. Sokash. Can you articulate what that will mean to our residents? what is the reduction of road standards to a minimum going to, how is it going to impact our constituents? Thank you.
I don't expect to see any impact on the residents. These are minor things that we'll be reducing. Such as doing some of the brushing ourselves, some of the roadside cutting ourselves. So you shouldn't see any impact at all.
Thank you for that. And second question, if I can, as a follow-up. Great to see us attempting to try to extract some out of IT. I wonder whether or not we could realize a little bit larger of a gain. Right now, I'm seeing about 4.5% of reduction in the IT space, and I'm just wondering if there's a way that we could possibly reduce those costs a little bit greater. But aside from that, fantastic job. Thank you.
So if I may, I would like to take that opportunity to actually demonstrate to council our budgeting software and all the work that goes behind it by the senior team. If you give me just a moment. Not sure if you want to take another question while I load this.
Councillor Predko?
Yeah, actually, it's not so much a question, but I also did want to compliment our staff on the efforts that they've made throughout this process to find $1 million worth of cost efficiencies. I know it's been a difficult process, but I think our residents and your councillors are very grateful for your efforts.
Yeah, over 1.3 million was cut. So we're waiting on you, Ms. Boutier, to show us something? Okay. Council, any other questions while we're waiting for the next show and tell? Councillor Cooper.
I have a few things. Just clarifying, I'm trying to follow all the numbers and lines here. The budgeted amount for water testing is it 25 for Georgian Bay and 15,000 for inland? Is that correct?
It's 25 for both. We previously had 10 with the WEANCO initiative that we know we're not going to get for 2023. And the motion added another 15 to it. So it's 25 each. So 50,000 total.
Oh, okay. So it's 25 and 25, but it started out as 30,000 for Georgian Bay. And I think we were quoted 15,000 for inland.
Sorry, it's 30 and 25. Apologies.
Okay, but I just wanted to clarify that we were quoted 15.
We asked for budget.
Yeah.
So she quoted us 15, we put a resolution table.
I follow that, but it's really only going to be 15,000 to do the work.
Well,
anyway,
Where there's no obligation to spend the entire budget.
good. But we're looking for ways to continue to slim down. So I just wanted to ask about that. In terms of have we dropped, I think we did, but have we dropped the Honey Harbor water testing from SSEA?
I can take that through you, Mercutia. So far, yes. That $6,000 that's in there is basically to finish off the testing from 2022. But at this point, we are not doing any water testing for 2023 in Honey Harbor.
Good. So that's I think a $11,000 or $12,000 savings. And I'll let that just sit for now. I do have a couple of other questions for later on, but want to hear more. Thanks.
Councillor Jarvis, followed by Councillor Graziano.
Yeah, my only, I think I'm just clarifying something. the proposal at the moment in front of us is to look at option 3 as the possible way of doing our taxes, our whole situation this year, sorting things out. And it includes a 400K from reserves. If I recall correctly, approximately half of that was a carryover from last year that wasn't used in reserves.
All of it.
All of it. Okay, thank you very much.
Councilor Graziano.
Thank you, Your Worship. I just wanted to add a comment on top of Councillor Cooper. I believe the two quotes, just for clarity, was 15,000 from one and 50,000 from the other. So if we take an average for inland lake water quality between the two, it'd be 32. So the 25 would still be below the average if in the event that we were to use the average. But to the mayor's point, we wouldn't need to use it if in the event that we find or our CAO and staff find an alternative that's satisfactory to everyone. Thank you.
All right, Ms. Booth.
Odds would have it, my town suite recorded an update before I loaded it this morning, so I'm about there.
Oh. Was it going to affect our decision on the budget?
Nope.
Okay, well, if I understand this process correctly, council, one, I think we've heard from a number of you that would agree with me that staff has done quite a extensive amount of work and have reduced the budget significantly. And the one question that they are asking us here, other than anything we might additionally want to put in, is what level of reserve do we want to use? And they had offered us a scenario, I believe, with $0, $200,000 and $400,000 and the consequent increase. And somewhere here I had that listed. Councillor Hazelton, you wanted to?
Just a quick question, since we're going to talk about reserves, can we be told what the current reserve pot is?
I imagine so.
Yes, and I am ready for the little demo as well, if.
Okay.
So,
Wait, will that demo lead us to a reserve?
sure.
Oh, let's do it.
We can do it all in one.
All right, thank you.
Here's a first glance at our town suite software. So this is what we use for the core of our financial. And there are other modules that are used by other departments. But essentially our budgeting tool that was shared by all the senior team. We replaced our what we used before for budgeting to fully digital budget in 2023. And I wanted to take IT as an opportunity to show you that every line that we detail out on the management view of that, we've got it all broken down into little tiny pieces. So there are multiple ways of doing a budget. Some of them are using trends, and we do write that in the line items, and some of them we use zero-based budgeting. We use that extensively in our training lines and also our IT. So I wanted to show, and it's a little difficult to see, but for example, our IT software support. We don't just throw a number of $260,000 in that line item and say, we hope that we'll have enough. I'm opening up the line. We literally list every software that we own and what the annual support will be. And I wanted to show you that so that you can see where our software money is going. So for example, hosted bid cloud services, it's $106,000 for the year. So these are our server equivalent. Our Microsoft licensing, $35,000 a year. These are all the users and who they are. So Yes, there are trimmings, Councillor Graziano, that can be done in each of these lines. It will take time to get there, and I don't want to short ourselves to do that. I would be willing to work with IT and our managed service provider to iron out these savings so that we can capitalize on them as soon as possible, but that they would reflect that percentage that you're looking for 2024 budget.
Thank you.
And I can even show you, like, there are some things that, you know, were there last year that we're saying do not renew because we've got a new MERP. And there are things that we've actually missed, like, for example, our Adobe Pro. It's in there now at a penny, so we don't miss it next year, but we actually missed budgeting for it.
All right, well, thank you very much.
Oh, and I was supposed to go right into reserves. So we do have $10 million overall of reserves. 3.3 of that is working fund reserves. And I can say that capital reserves are two. So our capital reserves are about 3.5, and so the difference remaining are of operational nature that are already earmarked.
And if I understand it correctly from the notes you've given us in the past number of years, we've averaged over $500,000 of reserve in our budget. And each year we in effect didn't use that because our overall reserve was going up.
Correct, and I think the explanation for that was COVID funding that we didn't budget for that happened, that we received.
And what we're doing this year for the first time that we haven't done in the past, we've taken into account some of, they'll call it the salary gapping for the absences, and already put that into the budget line. So that was always also a place where we had gained some money at year end.
Yes.
So therefore, and then I believe your report that you provided to us ended with a little table under the title Financial Considerations, in which you laid out zero reserve being used to quote unquote balance the budget, 200,000 and 400,000, and the subsequent tax rate increases both for the township portion and the overall that our taxpayers would see. And I think that's a very important chart for us to review at this point. But Councilor Hazelton, I believe it's all your hand.
Yeah, I just wanted to follow up on the reserves. So yesterday we heard from Councillor Graziano that Severn has a $40 million, $30 million reserve. And I hear that we have 10. Could you offer an opinion on what a healthy reserve would be for our township?
Yes, if I may pull up my financial statement. it is my opinion, and some financial professionals wouldn't agree with this. But it is my opinion that capital reserves, if I focus in on the capital reserve side, should be equivalent to the cost of our capital assets used to date and some for replacement value. So at a very minimum, our amortization balance is 27 million. So that means that is how much book-wise we've used our assets so far.
So I'm not sure I really understand where you're going. Should I just equate that we need a $27 million capital reserve budget or capital reserves?
If we were fully funding all of our assets from the beginning of time, and we know that that's not the reality of things, we've obtained grants and things like that to build our assets, and we needed to replace all of them in the future. Technically, the easy answer is yes, we've used so far out of our $47 million of assets, we've utilized or amortized 27 million of that. Therefore, our capital reserves the easy answer is should be around the same as our amortization. Now, that is not necessarily realistic because for example, an arena will amortize over 100 years or 50 years, whatever the number was chosen by the person who amortized it. But it might last much longer with a few dollars of rehabilitation or maintenance or whatnot. So there's no for sure number of where you should be at.
So sounds like we're pretty low in our capital reserves amount as we sit today. Then there's these other reserves. So I guess what I'm trying to get at here is what is the number that we should be targeting for? And I think if in our combined reserves we're at 10 million, it sounds to me like we're grossly underfunded, if you will, from a reserves perspective. And then when I look at the options that have been presented to us, option 3, which was supposedly the recommended one, draws down on our reserves by another $1 million, whereas the lowest drawdown on our reserves is scenario 2. And I'm not sure which scenario was really the right one, but it would occur to me that if we are grossly underfunded from a reserves standpoint, the last thing we should be doing is passing a budget that further draws down on the reserves. Is that a fair statement?
Through your worship, if I may, I want to make the distinction between the scenarios, which are forecasts, and we can't choose at this point a budget for future years besides 2023. And the options themselves is actually scenario 2, because the option is to draw. So there's a distinction between the scenarios 1, 2, 3 and the options 1, 2, 3. So the option 3 is actually scenario 2.
Option 3 is scenario 2. Okay.
Because I'm not proposing to draw from reserves in the future. I'm proposing to draw from reserves for 2023.
Thank you.
I would be curious, and I don't want to go down this rabbit hole too far, but when the reference is made to Severn having a $30 million reserve, we have no idea how their total assets are or their amortization table at this point. I mean, if they have double the assets, then, you know, it's not as impressive. If they have half the assets, it's hugely impressive. It's hard for us to know without the full scenario. But I would like to follow up with, you know, there is this asset management plan or AMP that we're implementing all that stuff, and through that we are putting a certain amount of money in our capital reserves per that schedule, are we not?
Yes, and council by choosing any of this option have not requested that we touch our capital levy. So our capital levy in all of the drafts so far, from draft 1 to draft 4, included over $300,000 of increase in our capital levy. And that is to exactly address that concern that Councillor Hazelton has brought up, which is that, you know, we've recognized that our reserves are underfunded and that our assets are aging and that they will require work in the very short future.
So we're already and have been for a fair number of years asking our residents to put more into our capital reserves than they were in the past to address that going forward. And I don't doubt also going forward, we will be doing our darndest if a significant capital project comes up to get some additional funding from our other levels of government, which in many cases, they've actually come through to some degree.
Yes.
So to get back to the, I'll call it operating reserves, basically, and I hate to use this word, but I'll dare do it. We're gambling. And what I mean by gambling was we're wondering to what degree we've over budgeted as time goes on, because we don't know in this coming year what unexpected expenses will show up, but we also don't know what unexpected savings will show up or revenue. That you know, we may find, and every year Ms. Schneier has always been able to find some funding somewhere for something that has helped us, and because she likes doing that. That's part of her job, and she does that well. So, and my understanding is in the last number of years we have averaged over $500,000 each year of reserves that we assume that we're going to end the year $500,000 better than our budget set. And you've painted in the end of your report 3 scenarios where we assume that we're going to end the year exactly where we set the budget, or we're going to end at 200 better or 400 better. And even the 400 is conservative compared to what we've been in prior years. So I think council, that's one of the decisions we're being asked to make today. And I think it's important that we look at that table that is sort of the last page of the cover report. And there with options 1, 2, and 3, we're referring to the effect of the different reserve balances we'll have on our residents. And I'm going to go to option 3, which is asking the least of our residents of these 3 options. And if you look at, you suggest that a median seasonal dwelling has a current assessment of 439,000. We know they're worth probably double their assessment, but that's the average assessment of a seasonal dwelling according to the information you have. And the most conservative where we include a $400,000 reserve, they will be paying an additional $183 of tax this year versus last year. That's what I saw on the table from that report. And if we go down to a 200,000 reserve, you add an extra $40 to their bill. And if we go down to a 0 use of reserve, you add an extra $80 to the bill. So, which of course just tells me if we actually went to a 600,000 reserve, we'd take $40 off that 183. But I think council, that's what we're talking. A decision here is, do we go with 400,000, which is you know, probably not a bad estimate of how well we'll do at the end of the year, but it's only a guess. Based on history, it's conservative. And ask our residents to pay a total of $183 more, or do we ask them to pay more than the $183 in order to be even more conservative? Councillor Graziano.
Thank you, Worship. Given my technology limitations today, I ask, what is the total cumulative increases for option 1, 2, and 3? I believe one of them was 5%. So if we were to go with option 3,
that we set 5.4% overall.
5.4%.
And option 2 was 6.3%. And option 1 was 7.2% overall. Increase.
Overall,
Yeah.
including the district increase as well.
Yes.
And so to his worship's comments, I would also be inclined to consider and strongly consider option 3, given the exercise that we've undergone and the cuts that we found. I think that 5.4% personally increase is not as drastic as perhaps some other municipalities. It is somewhat sensitive given the nature of the times, and inflation, and I think it's acceptable. So this is my comments. Thank you.
Councillor Cooper, please.
Thank you, and thank you for all the work that the staff has done. I think we've moved in the right direction, for sure. However, in terms of reserves, it's not a shell game, but it feels like a number that we can sort of move around with and make our lives easier or not so easy. But it is, I guess, a reality. I would like to know, though, in terms of our overall general performance, it's my understanding that there is a system in Ontario that takes the financial picture of each municipality and lumps it together under some sort of system. And in there, I would think it would say a typical capital reserve would be X% or whatever of your assets. If that's the case, when we're doing this work, should we not know that?
Through your worship, there is a system that compiles information, but it doesn't propose best practices. So everybody might be doing really bad. That doesn't mean that's the best practice, or everybody might be doing really good. We could pull an average, but that doesn't necessarily mean that it's good or bad.
So it doesn't give us any information with respect to what their assets are versus the reserve. It just gives us the reserve. It just gives us the assets. Could we not take the two totals and say the average is blah?
We could, yes.
Not just for us, but for the entire, so that we can sort of say to ourselves, at least on average, we're doing not as well or better.
Yes.
And I would find that helpful in the future. I think that would be, I don't know, it's just sort of it's a measurement. It's a bit like any business. If you've got 150 franchises for McDonald's, you know, a good performing one and a poor one.
And our asset management plan does capture provincial information and not just our own.
Right.
So that information is within that document as well.
Okay, so
would you
we
be
have
able-
that available to
would
us
you-
right now? Is that what you're saying?
I'm not prepared to read our 200-page asset management plan, even though I know most of it like the back of my hand. I don't have that page number.
Okay, so I'm
readily
just
available.
making a suggestion.
We'll be coming back with our capital budget, and I will make sure that information is
Thank you.
available.
A couple of other things, and I know when we're talking in the hundreds of thousands or millions that small numbers may not matter, but they do to me because it's all what the taxpayers have to pay. And I believe our CAO said that we're dealing with the water testing issue in Honey Harbor with SSEA. I'd like to understand what, if anything, we've said to SSEA, if you're having discussions with them anyway, we've said to them in terms of a renegotiation of our contract with them. I think it might be worthy of doing, given the certain circumstances of SASCA's mandate was to clean up Severn Sound. That was done 10 years ago or more. And yes, they do some good things in Severn Sound. Very little, small portion of our township is in Severn Sound. So I think it might be worthy of us negotiating something new. And I'd like to know if the CAO has given any thought to having that as part of the discussion when you're already discussing the water testing.
CEO Mariotti.
Thank you, Mayor Coetzee. So as Councillor Cooper knows, the township owns a portion of the SSEA. And so while we discussed the specifics of the water quality testing in Honey Harbor, we did not discuss, certainly myself as a member of staff, did not discuss negotiating alternative arrangements with SSEA. That is something that really should be council driven. We could facilitate for the SSEA to be present and have discussions with council, but that is a larger discussion to be had.
Thank you. So we've not had that and there's no intent to do that. So I guess it's resolutions at council to get some action on that front. And I'd be happy to do that. I think we need to really think about that. And the other organization that I think we need to think about is the Chamber of Commerce Seg Bay. We provide rental-free location to them. And I think it costs something around $20,000 to $25,000 to keep that building open. That's a pretty nice contribution to an organization that's basically a business marketing organization. It's not something our residents require, for sure. And if that's what we're doing, we're also now, I think every year been giving $5,000 to SSEA to support their activities. So there's two aspects to this, and I think it would be worthy of having a vote on that, or pull that item from our budget to vote on whether we should be spending that extra $5,000. Thank you.
Thank you. Yeah, Councillor Predko, followed by Councillor Jarvis, please.
Thank you, Mayor Kuchar. Ms. Puthalet, do you mind, now that we've gone through the budget numbers and the changes, the adds and removes, we've understood a little bit more about the reserves and the capital reserve. Do you mind walking through the recommendation again, just so that we can kind of take the numbers you've talked to and understand exactly what the number for capital revenue increase is? Is that capital revenue increase going back into the capital reserve? And the 92,000 of growth, and what is the 92,000 of growth? I just want to be able to relate these items back to the numbers we've been talking about so far this morning.
Yes, thank you. And through your worship, I want to bring your attention to the very last page of the detail. I don't have a page number, maybe page 28. So growth is included in line 1-1-9500-1010, Town General. So the changes from draft 1 to draft 4, you could see that it's a 52,743. I'm looking at council to, are you following?
So, but when you're talking about growth, is this an expense growth or a revenue growth?
It's a revenue growth of taxation. So it shows 52, but the actual growth is 32. There was already a 30,000 built into the first draft. So the overall change over last year is 92.
Okay, thank you.
And the growth is made from usually people who apply for building permits who want to expand on their properties.
Okay, so people who've had a building permit or a new development, they now have, we have more tax revenue, and it's just $95,000 or $92,000.
Correct. And on our town capital, you see that there's no change. So I'm going down a little bit lower in other YE is year end. Town capital 1-1-95-1015. So that's our capital levy. That's the money we collect that will get applied to the capital budget. So there's no change between draft 1 and draft 4. However, there is a change from last year. Let me get there. So the change from last year is actually capital. Is actually $349,000, and that change represents 14 0.87% that was adopted through our asset management plan that we adopted in early 2021. It also includes 2.39% increase to start funding the new pavilion at the Honey Harbor Park that was not included in our asset management plan because it's a brand new asset. And also 1.5 to start funding the replacement of the pickleball courts. So there's potentially a saving there because those pickleball courts are not yet built. So their 1.4 is already included because it was a motion in 2022 to start funding it.
Okay, so this is revenue to fund capital projects as opposed to revenue generated by capital projects.
Correct.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Jarvis, followed by Councillor Graziano, please.
Yeah, I just want to clarify, the SegBay monies that were not provided last year. And they have applied this year for grant funding, but I'm pretty sure I think we should clarify that. I know that last year, possibly the year before, there was no money given to SegBay, but I think we should check on that. And then finally, I'm in agreement with Councillor Cooper. We should review the rental contract that SegBay has with the Brissett House. That's an asset I know that's a bit of a burden to us as it is. I know that SegBay wants to help out financially with the any work that gets done on the Brissett House, but I think it'd be interesting to know for council's information what it is that we are getting as on the way of income from any rental use of that building. I think it's only the SegBay at this time. If that could be done at a future meeting, that'd be great.
Councillor Graziano, please.
Thank you, Your Worship. Julie, if I can ask, just for clarity, in this current iteration, we're seeing options 1, 2, and 3, 7.2%, 6.3%, and 5.4%. What were the original recommendations and the percentages, the total percentages, including the district? Do we have that data in front of us just so we can see how much we've saved in or by way of percentages? And then secondly, if I can ask, and this is not a 2023 suggestion, rather perhaps a report from staff for future. In Florida, they have a 2-tiered tax system, and perhaps there's no appetite for this on council. Tier 1 is those that are non-homesteaded, and tier 2 is homesteaded. And homesteading means that if you live on your property for X amount of months or more, you're given a discount. I go back and my mind continues to draw back to Councillor Bocek's comments around how one of his constituents only received, I think it was a $2 increase in their retirement pension payments. And I want to be sensitive to the fact that we have two different constituents here. We do have the full-timers, which I believe the average income was $90,000 a year in our township, and I would assume that that's based on 2 incomes rather than 1, versus those of cottagers as secondary properties. And I want to make sure that if we can, perhaps a report from staff could outline whether or not it's feasible, whether it would work, this type of system would work, whereby locals that live here full-time receive a bit of a discount because they're here full-time and not just seasonal. So just your comments on that?
Ms. Boutia.
Through your worship, I can't comment on the district portion. When we did draft 1, that data wasn't available at the time, and I haven't compiled their past budget with our draft 1. I've only combined it to our draft 4, but I know that the township portion in draft 1 was about a 45% increase compared to option 3, which is now an 11.7% increase.
So I'm sorry, option 1 in the original version or in D1 was 45% increase. So that was the worst case scenario. And now in our best case scenario, we're down to 11%. Is that correct?
Yes.
Thank you.
which makes sense because in the first case scenario, we had, was it 2.8 million or something?
2.1, yeah.
2.1, and now we're down to 800. So, you know, we knocked almost 2/3 of that increase out. 60% or something. Councilor Bochek.
I guess I'm supposed to leave my computer up so people can see me. All right, enough. Am I there? Hmm.
Are you home?
All right, well, I don't need to see myself. In listening to everything, it seems to be one of the hot topics is reserves and how we achieve our targets and reserves. But one thing that hasn't been added into the formula when you're looking at forecasting and budget is the asset even going to exist? You know, when it comes time for replacement. You know, we have an arena that could be a $10 million project, but we might not own it in 10 years. And yet we're forecasting and budgeting and putting away funds into reserves for that. I think staff has done a great job. I reviewed everything that my knowledge will allow me to review financially. And I think we've done a great job. And if we had to boil it down to looking at options today, I would be willing to go with option number 3, knowing that our staff has our best concerns at hand, and they're going to look at ways of any savings that we do happen to amalgamate over the year. You'll probably, you know, top up those reserves anyway. So I'm prepared to move forward with the budget under option number 3, and I'll just leave that with council for now.
Thank you. I also want to remind council that probably almost every council meeting between now and the end of the year, there'll be a financial option thrown in front of us. Do we spend a little bit more on this, or do we spend a little less on that? So when we pass a budget, even though we basically give an outline for staff to follow, it's almost a guarantee that we will be modifying it as time goes on. It's not, this is not cast in stone. It's cast in what we call concrete, where you can still make imprints in the rest of the year, one way or the other. Councillor Cooper.
Yeah, there was just a little bit of info that I thought I'd share. There was some question about income. This is unfortunately a bit stale, but it at least gives an indication. This comes from the document that was our strat plan from 2016 to 2019, and the average income for permanent residents at the time this study was done was $40,000, and the average income, 66% of the average income for seasonal residents was 100 to 100,000 to, for example, 2/3 are over 100,000. 2/3 of the seasonal residents are over 100,000. Just info for you.
Ms. Schneider.
Oh, thank you, Your Worship. Through you, of course. We just published the new community profile. We sent it along with your strategic plan. So we have current information for you as of the 2021 census. And there is a median household income for each community. And so you can reference that. And I've sent, you guys have it from the strategic planning exercise yesterday, but every community is listed there with current information if that helps you with your decision making.
Thank you. And I think, you know, if I may, in partial response to Councillor Graziano, that, you know, many of the permanent residents are in homes that are less than half the value than the waterfront seasonal dwellings, and therefore automatically they're paying significantly less tax, you know, than those who have waterfront. And the great majority of seasonal residents are waterfront, with only a few exceptions, and a lot of the year-rounders are not waterfront. There are lots of exceptions, of course, but I think that assessment helps share the load per ability to afford it, though not perfectly, obviously. Council, based on what I've heard so far, And where the heck did it go? I want to read to you the motion in front of me and see whether we can go with this. And this is based on option 3, and it's moved by Councillor Graziano, second by Councillor Hazelton. Be it resolved, the council directs staff to draft a 2023 budget bylaw in line with option 3 with a general tax revenue increase of $454,542 and a capital revenue increase of $312,736. And the council acknowledges the increase above includes $92,143 of growth. And the council acknowledges that the increase results in an 11.7% Township of Georgian Bay lower tier taxation revenue increase and a 5.4% overall increase, including the district and education tax increase. Councillor Cooper. Your hand was behind Councillor Hazelton's head when you first raised it, honest.
Wasn't purposeful. There we go. Yeah, so I did suggest that we pull an item because we're approving the entire budget here. Is that not correct? So,
Okay, we're approving staff to go ahead and draft the final bylaw that we will then formally approve at our next meeting.
and I know it's only $5,000, but I was suggesting that we pull the Seg Bay support because we are already subsidizing the rent. So I'm suggesting that we pull it.
Councillor Graziano for a comment, and Councillor Jarvis, do you want to comment?
I think
But I'll let Councillor Graziano go first. I just wasn't, and confirming your hand was up. So
my hand is up.
Yeah.
And perhaps this question is better suited for Councillor Jarvis, given that he is, you are on the Seg Bay board. Does Seg Bay currently promote local events outside of business marketing? So as an example, the Art on the Dock event for Gloucester Pool, would they endeavor to promote that on or through their website at all or anything along those lines?
If you go to their website, their event calendar includes absolutely everything that they know of going on in the region.
Okay.
So that would be logical that they would have that if they have the information that would allow them to put that on the calendar.
Okay.
So yes.
Thank you.
Ms. Boutiette, before I go to Councillor Jarvis.
Seg Bay is not currently included. We can't pull it. It's not in there.
Well, that resolved that one. It's not in there.
that was? Awesome. Way to go.
So what's that mean? There's no support there for them presently. I beg your
So
pardon?
the last direction was that we bring back a revised policy to capture all those other little ones. So the policy will be brought back and there will be an application
So we'll
process.
have to vote on that at some point.
The policy,
Okay,
And if any money were to go to Seg Bay this year, it would be outside the current budget. So yes, it would have to be voted.
well, the current budget has 4,000 for all others. So
Okay.
based on a policy that we need to revise.
so as a reminder to us, we have in the past set aside $5,000 for all, for example, cottage associations, and we're giving $5,000 to one organization. So I think it's worthy of an examination. Anyway, I'm glad to hear that we're going to vote on it at another time. I got that correct.
Councillor Jarvis, did you want to make any further remarks?
I think we should see clarification on exactly what we have funded in the past in the way of programs requested by our municipal, cottage groups and other groups of interest in historical society included. I think we should find out what our granting procedures have been in the past and what the trend has been, because I know for a fact that there was no monies to Seg Bay last year whatsoever. And I had advised them they shouldn't be asking for it. That was last year. And I had warned them this year they probably wouldn't be getting anything. So I do know, we know they made a deputation to us. They were looking for funds, but they are well aware of the fact that no decision had been made as of our last budget meeting, which is what I reported to them last night. So, yeah, I wouldn't mind having a historical. We can go back, say 5 years, go pre-COVID to what we've been doing for the various groups. It'd be great to have as a point of information going forward. Thanks.
Councillor Bocheck.
Yeah, I think this is a good topic to be discussing, but at the same time, we have to look at the ramifications of what we do and what we fund. An operation like the Chamber of Commerce is generally funded throughout Ontario by the local governments. And we do see a return for our investment. I know that we send hundreds of thousands of dollars up to the district for things like hospitals and hospice and things like that. Yet Segbay year after year donates $35,000 to the GBGH, to the seniors home Wendat. And hence maybe we don't fund those organizations as much as we would, because Segbay does a good job. And I'm very much in support.
Okay, but I think right now, Segbay is not a
Correct.
decision we're making.
Correct.
This,
And if they were to come
meeting.
back to council and ask for the money, council could make a decision at that point.
Well, right now, best of my knowledge, we have a split vote, 1 for, 1 against, and the rest I'm going to solicit when it's on the agenda.
Okay, great. Thank you.
How's that?
That's great.
Okay. With that, council, would like me to read the motion one more time? All those in favor? And that is carried unanimously.
Yay, yay.
And
Everybody exhale.
and
Start writing checks down.
the cheering you hear, I'm sure, is with thanks and gratitude for all the work you've done and the patience you've shown and the education you have given us over the last 4 months, I guess now almost. So thank you.
You're very welcome. And we are starting the budget process next month. So for 2024, I'm not kidding.
You just can't get enough of it.
I think this is the latest we've ever passed a budget in the 10 years that I've been here. I don't think we've gone into May.
This is March.
I know, but it's going to be by May before it's the finalized, right? This is very late in the year because you're coming back to us next month, right? With the final approval, which is April, mid-April, right? This is
Next week is our April meetings.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Are we going to be bringing that back to the April meeting? We have time?
I am very hopeful to issue an addendum on Friday for Monday's agenda.
Awesome.
I like optimism. I like hope. So what we have now are 2 resolutions. Sorry, motions, they're not resolutions yet, are they? Moved by Councillor Jarvis, seconded by Councillor Predko. Be it resolved, the council adopts bylaw 2023-036 to confirm the proceedings of the March 29th, 2023 special council budget meeting. All those in favor? And that is carried. Thank you. And moved by Councillor Bocheck, seconded by Councillor Hazelton. Be it resolved, the council is now adjourned at 10:13 a.m. until April 3rd, 2023 at 9 a.m. or at the call of the chair. We have another meeting that's called for today. So do I have to make reference to that here? That's fine. Okay. All those in favor of adjourning this meeting? And that is carried.